why would it be a good idea to have the perfect business? I mean, to plan for it, right? This is something that we don't actually give ourselves permission to do. So usually we're very reactive when it comes to having our own business. So we're just kind of taking hits from everything that happens to us, and we're trying to do the best we can, but we're really not being proactive actually in getting the business that we actually want. So this is why, as Trevor was talking about earlier, having your own business can turn you into, you're your own boss, but you're actually also your own slave, right? So, and I've been doing this, having my own business now for 40 years. I had a little break there right at the beginning where I spent 2 years working at a marketing company. What it taught me was that I didn't want to have a boss, and I just couldn't work for anybody. That was definitely clear there. I worked there 2 years, and then I said, going to have my own business. And ever since then, 37 years later, I've been running my own business, right? And, looking back on it all, I'm really, really glad that I did that. But, obviously it's had its ups and downs and lots of things have happened. But all in all, I'm really, really glad that I had my own business. And one of the things that I was always working on, really intuitively at first and then overtly, was saying I'm always working towards the perfect business, and that changes. The idea of that changes, but that's always something that I'm working towards. Okay, so I'm trying to be proactive as opposed to just being reactive to everything that happens to me. Like the pandemic, for example, that was a thing that none of us could predict, and it hit us hard. But even then, I was going, well, what's the perfect business in that environment, right? That was what I kept telling myself. And I don't know, maybe it's just something that we don't allow ourselves to do, because I've noticed this in coaching people. I go, well, what's your like they're complaining, okay? Like basically it starts off, there's a lot of complaining, okay? Complaining about this, complaining about that. And so that's, I say complaining is not a strategy. That doesn't do you any good. Getting angry is not a strategy. Thinking about the government and what they're doing is not a strategy. Okay, like there's a lot of that going on these days. And so none of that's a strategy. What is a strategy is to decide what you want, what your perfect idea of business is, and then work towards that. So I remember when I started out, my idea of a perfect business was having a big office with lots of people working for me, and that was my vision. Nowadays, I call that my old factory. And I did that, and I built it up to a certain point, and then I realized it's not perfect, because I've actually become a slave to this business. Okay, so, but it got me really going. It got me to a lot of success. But at that moment, I said, you know what? Now, it's not perfect for me. Okay, well, what is perfect? So that was having a more virtual business. So this was 2014, around there, 10 years ago. And I said, the perfect business now is not to have this big office with all these people, but to make the whole thing virtual. And so then I worked towards that. I wrote it all down. I said, this is what the perfect business was. And I spent a lot of time thinking about that, right? And it was interesting because by the time the pandemic happened, I had the virtual business, and it was kind of perfect at that point. And then the pandemic happened, and I was actually in pretty good shape as far as my operations and so on. And then everybody said, well, you were talking about a virtual business before pandemic kind of made it necessary. So this is always something that I've been working on, and it does it really does motivate me to keep moving forward, right? So that's why for me, I'm 67, absolutely no interest in retiring, because at this point I have this whole new vision of what my perfect business will be. And I think of it as kind of in versions too, right? So over the last, let's say, like really 40 years, I'm now on version 18. So it's like an iPhone. So I could say, now the next version, my next version is going to be even more perfect than this one. What is it? So I've got Big Idea Company version 18 I'm working on. And partly that's because of AI. AI has changed my whole idea of what the perfect business could be. And so I just now am putting that in to go for, right? So I'm going, what would that look like? It would be so good, right? And so a lot of the things for me that makes what I want my business to be perfect. And bear in mind, okay, no one's ever going to get it 100% perfect, all right? Like that's not really the point. It's that you're allowing yourself to have that vision. So part of my vision, with this virtual business that I have now is, I can work anywhere. I have very low fixed overhead. Any overhead I have that I incur is it flexible overhead. That it's usually just because I'm busy and we have work and I can incur some overhead, but I'm always making money when I have that overhead, right? I'm only working a certain number of days and a certain number of hours per day. Okay, so it really 4 times 4 in my case, like 4 hours a day and 4 days a week. So people go, well, how do you get all this done that you do? I go, because I've created a system around it, but that's my goal. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes I have to work more than that, but usually that's just because I've got lots going on and I've got some great opportunities, but I'm still trying to get it down to that 4x4 idea, 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. And that for me is a perfect balance. Okay, and those 4 hours the day are actually split. Typically, right now doing these groups, it's more or less 4 hours all at once, but the rest of the week it's kind of split up into 2 groups of 2 hours. So when I have that idea of the perfect business, it was like, well, I need to maximize my efforts in that time frame, because you see, the thing is, what happens is if we don't have that kind of those parameters, it just ends up being we just end up working 10 hours. But it's kind of a sloppy 10 hours. Okay? So we end up just kind of going, well, I got a whole 10 hours to do all this, so I'm just going to have kind of a sloppy 10 hours. That's what I saw myself doing. I go, but if I actually only have 4 hours, I can get it done in 4 hours because if I just have some intensity, but also I'm building systems around saying, I'm going to got to get all this done in 4 hours. So by having the perfect business saying 4x4, it forced me to say, how do I get the value out there? How do I make the money that I need in that time? So the bigger principle that I'm trying to help everyone do is to say, wouldn't the perfect business be, from the perspective of now, that you'd make 10 times more money and work half as much time? So that, and then end up have 10 times more fun too. Because fun is actually key to this perfect business thing. If it's not fun, you shouldn't be doing it. Okay? This is not slave labor. This is you setting up your own life. And you can say, if it's not fun, I'm not doing it. Okay? Or maybe I have to do it, like the taxes. I've done that in the taxes in the last few weeks. I hate that part, believe me. But I figured out I could get it down to absolute minimum amount of time and effort of doing that thing that I just don't like doing. Obviously, nobody likes doing that part, right? So there's always going to be a few things like that, but that's also my goal. It's like, it's not fun, so I'm going to figure out how to systematize it. So we're working on, in this program here, is really, I think this is the underlying purpose of it. So it's taken me since last October to kind of figure this out, is that to help you work towards your perfect business. That is what we're going to work towards, okay? And it's really fun, just like I sort of did that deliberately with the perfect business thing. It is to say, every time you find a little thing like that, you fix it, right? Now, every time you do that, you're just working towards having the most perfect possible business, okay? Now, what are some of the areas that you could work on? Let's see here. So let's just go through these, and you can think about planning these for yourself here. So I'm just gonna have the list handy. There we are. Okay, so the first one, and you can take these in any order you want, but these are the things that I kind of keep focusing on. Okay, so the perfect lifestyle. That's the first one. Okay, so you want to say, what's the life I want to have first? Okay? This is something I really figured out. So I want to figure out my perfect life first, and then I'll build a business that will help me get that. But if you say, really, if you say, well, I just want to have this successful business, then that's what you're going to focus on. And then your life is sort of a secondary idea. And that's not a sustainable thing. So, I'm on my second and final marriage. Okay, I'll tell you that. Definitely not going to be a third one at all. But the first one ultimately was because I hadn't figured that out. So I was really working. I loved my business so much. I loved it more than anything. So therefore, that wasn't good for my marriage, right? And so that's just me. But that was part of the lesson of that. And it wasn't just because of my business that all went sideways. But it was a factor, and it was a learning experience for me to say, okay, I need to put my life first, and then my business second. Decide the perfect life that you want to have. And so for me, it's like, okay, well, I don't want to. I want to be working this much time, as the rest of it's for me. And also, I want to be able to travel. So I go, okay, I need a virtual business so that I went to Germany. I spent a month there, and I worked from there. It was fine. I went to Mexico for a month. I worked from there, right? I've done that a bunch of times. I went to Paris for a month. I worked from there. I went to London for a month. I worked from there. So it's kind of, that was another part of my vision. Go somewhere for a month. We'll be able to work there. I'm not working all the time, but basically that's my home base at that point. So that was the life I wanted to have, right? And so when you start off thinking about your perfect business, start off by thinking about, well, what's my perfect life? Okay, that's the first thing. And write all that down and just keep working on it and thinking about it. And this starts to help you make good decisions. So then the work day part. So the perfect work day. So what I've done many times is write down, okay, well, what would be the perfect flow of the whole work day? It may be just your whole day, right? Because they'd say, okay, this is what I want to do in the morning, and then I get ready for work, and then I do my work, and then afterwards. So you go, what does that work day look like? One of the things that I was experiencing was that when it wasn't perfect, was my day was all chopped up into little 10-minute meetings. So I'd have all these little meetings with people, and I looked at my calendar, and it was just all over the place, and there were lots of gaps in it. And at the end of the day, I go, what did I do? I didn't do anything. So now my calendar is 2-hour blocks of time that I'm spending with a client or a prospect or preparing a speech or something. And that is the work day that I plotted out that I wanted to have. So then I started thinking, okay, well, how do I design my product around that, right? And I'm very, very careful. I go, no, I don't meet somebody for 15 minutes. It doesn't happen. Okay? There's no 15-minute meeting, because that's, unless it's absolutely, like I say, talk to my accountant about my taxing, just get it off the table, fine, 15 minutes, fine. But if I'm talking to, doing business here, the serious business, it's like, no, it's got to be at least an hour or 2 hours. That's it. Those are the blocks, right? And some high quality stuff is being done during those time slots, right? One of the things I do is I have my inbox, which is all my, all the crap I have to do that isn't, it's all the back end things. And I have that in a little box, and it's in a cupboard behind me. It's way out of sight. So anything like a piece of paper, I get some document. You get some document from the government or something. You got to fill it out. I might print it off or whatever, and then I stick it in the box. And that all comes down to an hour a week that I go into that box, and I work on that box. And then when that hour's up, I just stick it back in the drawer, and I don't look at it again for another week. So even if I didn't get it all done, doesn't matter. Just 1 hour on that box. That's it. That's part of my perfect business. So I'm not in the middle of the day going, okay, now I got to fill out that form. Okay, fine. And and then I'll do some work with a client. And then I gotta call the somebody and talk to them for 5 minutes and something. No, it all comes down to that 1 minute. Now okay. So one other thing about the work day. No, I'll leave that. Okay, so the next thing is livelihood. Okay, so we don't usually talk about livelihood. It almost sounds like an old-fashioned expression. But what would be the perfect livelihood for you? Okay, and so that means that you're really it's looking at, well, what's the meaning of this livelihood? What is the meaning of my work, right? And I think that's important too. It's like I want to have work that I find meaningful. There were plenty of opportunities for me to do all kinds of things. I could have made way more money, but it wasn't a meaningful livelihood. It wasn't something that I wanted to do, in the end. It wasn't just for me about the money ultimately. But I did say to myself, I want to create a business. I want to have a business I love doing. I'm always pursuing the things I'm interested in, and I make good money. So if I don't quite make as much money as I would have with this other thing, I go, yeah, but I didn't want to do that other thing. So this can really get you thinking about, well, what's the livelihood that I should have, and also there's people like come in contact with me, and I'm not crazy about their livelihood. I'm crazy what they're doing, so I'm not really interested. So I don't want to hang out with those people. That leads into the next one, the clients. Like their livelihood is just not. It's fine. I'm not judging them. It's just not. I just don't want to be part of it, right? It's not even that they're doing anything illegal. It just doesn't work for me. So the livelihood is just the thinking. What's the meaning of this, and that I want to be doing something that I really believe in. That's important. And the next thing is the clients. Now, we talked a lot about that in these roundtables, is clients, having the perfect clients. And then people say, what do you mean? How can you have perfect clients? I go, no, you can. So I basically, as I talked about before, I divide them into green light, yellow light, and red light. And the green lights are the only ones I end up working with. I've decided, I'm only going to work with the green lights, and that's my decision to make, and what that means. Okay, but they're kind of aligning with all the other stuff, because when I decided to have the perfect business, 4x4, I had this big client who had kind of paid me a lot of money, but also expected a lot from me as far as 9 to 5, and almost immediately they fired me because they didn't like the 4x4 idea. And it was like, good, in the end it was horrible at first, but it's like ripping off a Band-Aid or something. But ultimately, got rid of them, because that's not fitting with everything else. Okay, and it's tough because this is how we get lost if we don't have this vision of perfect business, right? Oh, well, there's a client. They've got money. I could work for them. But now you go down a rabbit hole with them, and now it's wrecking all the other stuff. So I go, no. I'm the one that gets to decide. And it's all better for everyone in the end anyway, not just for me. So perfect client. Then we have the yellow, the red lights. Like they're like radioactive. Stay away from them. And they're not going to give me those other things. They're not going to give me my perfect business. And then there's the yellow light, and they're kind of tempting. They're kind of like, come, And it's like, no. Those are the ones you got to watch out for. So last week I had a yellow light experience, and I get into the conversation, and I go, okay, well, I'm hoping there'll be a green light. But the yellow started flashing around the 20-minute mark. I'm going, okay. Yeah, they're yellow. They're going to have to really show me they're a green. And no, it did. I go, fine, it doesn't matter. It's like on the next one. Because they're not going to help me have the perfect business. Okay? And the perfect life, and the perfect workday, and the perfect livelihood. Okay? So then we have products and pricing. So you want to have the perfect business. You want to work half as much. You want to work 10 times more money. Well, now you need products and pricing that's going to support that. What is that? Okay? What does that look like? So for me, I said, well, I need to increase the value intensity of what I'm doing. Which means when I have that hour or 2 hours with people, I am going to give them so much value that I can charge more. Because I've had people tell me, you have created such an efficient system here that I got more done in this hour or 2 hours than I got done in 6 months doing it myself or with someone else. So I can charge you more, right? So that was very deliberate. It's like I'm not trying to be greedy. I'm just saying, look, I'm going to give you an incredible intensity of value, and I'm going to charge for it. But in the end of the day, it's going to be cheaper for you. And so the other part of that idea of the value intensity, it's also saying, okay, well, what am I uniquely good at that, is kind of, so at the end of the day, I said, it's a big ideas is the thing. That's for me was the thing. So I go, a big idea can be worth millions to people. And I've seen that. So I'm going to focus on that because that'll help me have the perfect business, you see. And so there are a lot of things I started to drop off. I go, I don't want to do those things anymore. People will pay me for them or pay us for them, the people I have around me. But I don't want to do that anymore. It's not giving me that perfect business. So, so you might say, oh, just one last time, I'll do it. Okay. One last time. But as I always say, there's a last time for everything. And so you go, that's the last time. So this year, I'll get into that with the marketing, but there's a couple of things I did. I go, that's the last time I remember doing that. That's not perfect, so forget it. Okay. Then we have the packaging, the perfect packaging. That's something that I think is very, very important, and this is a big part of our program. Is go, what's the perfect elevator pitch? What's the perfect sales process, marketing process? What's the perfect way to close them, right? All of that, but the packaging. What's the perfect way to package up our programs? What are the different sizes we have? Always working. What's the perfect marketing material? What's the perfect website? It sounds like a lot of work, but it's actually a lot of fun because every time you move towards perfection, it becomes easier and easier. Everything becomes easier, right? The other way I've always described business, it should be like a work of art. It should be saying, you're having a work of art, and you want to make it as perfect as possible. It's an expression of your art, right? So if you look at a business as a work of art, which nobody ever talks about, by the way, because it sounds weird, but I think of it that way. I think of business as a piece of art, and so if you're the artist, then you're not going to want to just throw off something crappy, right? You're going to want to make it the best it can be, and you'll be their worst critic, right? For sure, you'll be the worst critic because you're the one creating the art, right? So anyway, so that's the packaging part. Technology, the perfect technology. So never settle for half-assed technology. Okay, there's always something better. So I was using OBS for all these graphics and everything you're seeing here. And then I found Ecamm. I go, you know what? That's better. I'm going to switch. It was hard. I could have just settled for what I was doing. But I go, no, I'm going to learn how to do Ecamm because it's better and make it more perfect. And so I spent a bit of time on it. And now it's easier. I save a lot more time. I can do a lot more with it. It was worth it to work towards the perfect system that way, right? So as far as technology, like AI, right? Just like, how can we do that? Perfect that, like what that look like? How can we use that, right? You don't need to knock yourself out on all this. Like, it doesn't be like, oh my God, it's got to be perfect. That's the thing I don't want you to get too caught up in. But it's like you've got to have that North Star, right? Okay, then your operations. Like, what is the best form of operations? And what you want to do is minimize it and optimize it, okay? So anything in your operation that is actually providing value, get rid of it. Just dump it. So for example, like having stuff around. Any stuff that's around your business, all this stuff that isn't useful, just get rid of it. I think I told you I had a company, a separate company, that we did office organizing. It was probably I was just working on some kind of a neurosis or something, but it was really, really interesting business because we would go into like sometimes big buildings and we would organize the whole building from and mostly the biggest part was just getting rid of stuff. So we get like rid of 80% of the crap that was in that building, and they became so much more productive because of that. But they just were holding on to all this stuff. So every once in a while, we have cleanup week, and I just go, okay, let's just go through everything and get rid of anything that doesn't provide value. Like, you need to start noticing I got all this old technology, all this old crap, all these old hard drives, all these old wires and all this stuff. Just get rid of it all, because it's not helping have the perfect business. So, so all that sort of backstage stuff that you want to kind of either eliminate it, delegate it, or automate it, right? To minimize the time. I used to spend like at least 20 hours a week on operations. Now it's down to 1 hour. The team. So having the perfect team. That's one of the most challenging part, because now we're dealing with imperfect human beings. Okay, we're all imperfect, but you want to have a really good team around you, right? And that can be extremely helpful. Now, there's a part of my life that you don't even know about, probably. I have this whole team of people, not just for my business, but my personal life. So I have somebody that goes and basically kind of lives my life. And I've had 2 people for the last 30 years that have done this. And they go into grocery shopping, dry cleaning, running errands, all of this stuff that I don't have time for. And they love doing it, and I love them doing it. Okay, right? And then and then I have other people that do other things like that, and it all just frees up my time. And in the end of the day, it's not that expensive. It's a lot more expensive for me to do those things, and my neighbors just don't get what's going on. Okay, because I work at home now. It's part of the perfect business, actually. And all these people are running around, coming in and out, doing all this stuff, and they just go, I don't get it. I said, yeah, I'm running my own business. This is how I'm able to do it. Marketing system. So the marketing system is what we really talk about a lot here, obviously. And what's the perfect marketing system? And that can always be a moving thing. But what's the best way for me to get clients, right? So this is what I say. Like last week, I did a few marketing things, and I go, that used to work, doesn't work anymore, not doing it anymore. I just don't need to do that. Now that sometimes leaves you with a void, because you go, well, what am I going to do instead? But that's okay. Don't just fill up your time with activity. Go, you know what, that's not working anymore. That's not perfect anymore. What would be the perfect way to do marketing? And every time that I put my mind to that, I've come up with something. You go, what would be the better way anyway? But really the perfect way. And then finally, the financial situation, which I'm putting last, because that's the part that could be put at the top. Okay, and that could screw everything up. So I go, well, what is the perfect financial situation? So all of us have to decide, okay, where am I at right now in my financial situation, and where do I want to be? Now, for me, 2 things. One, I don't want to be worrying about money, because that takes away from things. Secondly, I just want to have enough money so I can do my thing. At the end of the day, that I just want to support this. Okay, so I'm not trying to get so much money that it'll screw the system up, but I need enough that it will give me this perfect thing. So how much is that? And what I've done over the last 40 years is I've always socked away enough and that's personal money. I have that socked away, obviously, hopefully. But then I have my business pile of money that's socked away. So that money is there just to support this business, right? So I don't ever want to spend it if I can help it. It's just going to keep building up. But I want it to be there so that I can just focus on having the perfect business. That's actually the point. So for me, I go, okay, I could spend that money right now, or I could save it, and that will help me get that, I guess, security or comfort that I can just do my perfect business and I don't have to worry, right? And I'm not scrambling, and I'm not trying, I'm not taking on clients that I don't need. So I've been doing that for 40 years, okay? And so and my son, I said to I was showing it to him, right? And he said, what do you mean you're not going to spend that money? I said, well, you'll probably get it. Okay, so don't complain. But the other thing is that it's there because it's just, a security blanket, basically, right? And then I can just be more comfortable in pursuing the perfect business. So that's actually the point of the money, is to give me because if you're struggling with money, then you're going to do a lot of things that you don't want to do. And of course, when you're starting out, maybe you have to do that. I certainly had to do that. Basically started with no money. So that was, I had to keep going. And so the first part was a struggle, but then I got to this point. I go, right, this is the point. I want to not be like this anymore. I want to be in the perfect situation if I can. So what does that look like from a financial standpoint? So there's probably other topics that you could add on to this list. You could make your own list of things that you want to think about. But here's the deal. So, I had talked about new factory, old factory, new factory. It's embedded in that concept. Okay. So we have our old factory, and, it's pretty good, but it's not perfect, right? So it's, and maybe it was better before and not so good now or whatever. So now you go, okay, I'm also now creating this second idea, the new factory. And when I think about that, I am plotting out the perfect business. What would that look like? Maybe with AI now, it's like, I don't even have to be in the business. The AI runs the whole thing. Maybe that's what we're all going to get. But you're only going to get that if you say, this will be the perfect thing. Right? And I don't think any of us are trained to do that. It's like, you start telling your parents or your teachers or whoever, I'm going to create the perfect life, right? Oh, life isn't perfect. You can't have the perfect life. You'll see, And so, there's a lot of cynicism there, right? And I go, oh yeah, okay. So that basically knocks it into, you got to just take what you get, and that's it. And that's just, it's why it works hard, and, and you probably have a heart attack, but that's okay because you're working hard, and it doesn't have to be that way, right? So I think this is, for me, very inspiring, and it just keeps me moving forward. So I just took a blank piece of paper, in the workshop, way more formal workshop exercise, but on your blank piece of paper, just write, well, if my business was perfect, what would it look like? And I notice people want to rush through that. Like, there's no point in rushing through that. Maybe it'll take you a month. Maybe it'll take you a year to figure that out. But as soon as you start thinking that way, your tolerance for what isn't perfect will go away. You just won't allow that, because you'll say, I can't do that because it's not what I want anymore. And so I think that there's an issue around even allowing ourselves to say, oh, I want to have the perfect business, right? Now, the journey is still more important than the destination, okay? There's no doubt about it. So working towards the perfection is actually the point. It's not really about having it be perfect, because that's never going to happen. So we don't want to be perfectionists here. I'm not trying to instill that in you. It's just that you got to say, okay, I was really thinking about going over here, but if I think about it perfectly, I'm really got to go over here. And that's where I really want to get to. Now, that's why we have the old factory, because in the meantime, you gotta just do the old factory. But at least you've got a plan to break out of prison, right? I worked at the CAG, as some of you know, when I won the lobster contest. And at a certain point, it was getting to the point where it's like, I really shouldn't be working here anymore. Like, this was supposed to be a summer job or a college job, university job. But there was good money there. So what I did was I said, well, I'm going to start this magazine as well. That's what was my new factory. So I kept working in the restaurant, and I built up this magazine. And then it made enough money, I could quit the restaurant. So I did that. So then I had the magazine, and then I said, well, that's fine, but maybe I could have other magazines. So I built up, I built this idea of creating a publishing business with other magazines. And then we ended up with 100 magazines. And I go, okay, well, now I got 100 magazines. Now what? Okay, well, we want to have an internet business. Okay, so then we built an internet business. And I just kept saying, what's the next perfect thing? What would be the next thing? to do, and it just kind of mirrored how technology was evolving, right? So that's why for me, not going to retire, because that's not my idea of perfect, right? It sounds good on some level, but not for me. Now, here's a little poem that my wife Ginny dropped on me yesterday. So she's like a poet, and so she's always reading me poems. So let me just read this. It's called My Hero. It's kind of interesting. When I read it first, I kind of taken aback a bit. So, just as the hare is zipping across the finish line, the tortoise has stopped once again by the roadside, this time to stick out his neck and nibble a bit of sweet grass, unlike the previous time when he was distracted by a bee humming in the heart of a wildflower. That's Billy Collins, the famous poet. You know poems. And so when she read that to me, I went, oh, wait a minute, I thought the tortoise won the race. And then she said, well, it's just about deciding what your idea of winning means, right? And so for me, that was good, because when she said that, that's exactly what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. Is that it's the journey and the lifestyle, and the idea of winning is something that we have to think about. It's like, well, what am I winning? So I really like that poem, and maybe I'll use a few more poems. We're going along here, but another a book I wrote. It's called Going to the Net. I don't know if you've heard of that book that I wrote, but it started off just being a book about tennis. Like, I was writing a book about my tennis career and all the things I'd learned about teaching tennis and competing in tennis and so on. And it was kind of interesting. It's a different kind of book, but ultimately it came down to, well, what does it really mean to win at a game like tennis, or any kind of game? And it wasn't about winning. The score wasn't really the point. Okay, there were a lot of other elements to it. So that's really how I feel about all of our businesses. Is that if you pursue the perfect business, it means that you're thinking about, what do I really value? What does really winning mean for me? And then to go, okay, well, that's really, 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 really what I want. And then because you have your own business, you can make that happen. And so that's why we're in such a good position to help ourselves. And then if you help yourself, you're going to help the world more. Okay? So that's my presentation about having the perfect business.